Listen carefully to this story. It happened in our village, and those who witnessed it will never forget. Madam Olama was a wealthy woman. Her husband owned 3 shops in the city, and her children wore the finest clothes. Everyone knew her name. Everyone respected her family. But respect and honor are not the same thing. On Christmas morning, while other families exchanged gifts with pure hearts, something dark was about to be born in Olama's compound. Her neighbor, Mama Chidi, had just visited and said something that burned Olama's pride like hot coal. "You act so holy, Olama, but your house feels heavy. Even your maid looks tired." Those words struck deep. Olama's smile cracked like old pottery. She waited until Mama Chidi left, then called out sharply for Nneka, her maid. "Bring me those old clothes from my children's room, the useless ones. Bring them now." Nneka appeared quickly, bowing respectfully. Olama pointed at the pile of cast-off garments, her voice cold and tight. "Take these. Merry Christmas." As Nneka touched the bundle, something strange happened. The cloth felt warm like human skin. She pulled her hand back, confused, but said nothing. Nneka was not always a maid. She was once a mother, a wife, a woman who sang while cooking and laughed while braiding her daughter's hair. But life had taken everything from her. Her husband died when a tree fell during a storm. Her 2 children followed him into the grave, one from fever, the other from hunger. She buried them with nothing but old rags and prayers whispered into the earth. When Olama hired her, Nneka was grateful. She worked without complaint, waking before dawn and sleeping after everyone else. She swept, she cooked, she washed. She never asked for more than her small room behind the kitchen. Now, holding the bundle of clothes, Nneka's eyes stung with tears, but she bowed low. "Thank you, madam. God bless you." Her words were sincere. She meant every syllable. But Olama turned away without answering, her face tight with something Nneka could not name. As Nneka walked toward her room, she whispered a quiet blessing over the clothes. "May these bring joy to someone who needs them." Her heart was pure. Her gratitude was real. But Olama's generosity was not. And in that moment, something ancient stirred. A thin, black thread slipped from the bundle and wrapped slowly around Nneka's finger. Nneka walked slowly home, balancing the bundle on her head. The path led past the river, where women washed clothes and children splashed during dry season. But today, everything felt different. The fishermen stopped pulling their nets. They stared at her in silence. Birds that usually sang in the trees fell quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Nneka felt the weight of their eyes but kept walking. When she reached the river bank, she paused to adjust the bundle. The water was calm, reflecting the afternoon sun like a mirror. She glanced down and saw her own face staring back. But then something else appeared, another face right behind hers. Nneka spun around, heart pounding. No one was there. She turned back to the water. The second face was still there, smiling with her mouth, but not with her eyes. The reflection moved even when Nneka stood still. The river had always been sacred in this village. Old people said it remembered everything, every promise, every lie, every secret. It witnessed births and deaths. It knew truth from falsehood, and now it was watching Nneka. She stepped back from the water's edge, clutching the bundle tighter. Something was wrong. Something had begun. That night, Madam Olama sat at her dining table, surrounded by abundance. Plates of jollof rice, fried chicken, moi moi and chin chin covered the surface. Her husband ate quietly, and her 3 children giggled and played with their new Christmas toys. The house was filled with laughter and light. Olama felt satisfied. She had done her duty. She had given her maid a Christmas gift. People would hear about it and praise her generosity. But as she reached for another piece of chicken, her youngest daughter, Ada, suddenly stopped laughing. The 6-year-old tilted her head, listening to something no one else could hear. "Mama," Ada whispered, her voice small and frightened. "The cloth is calling." Olama frowned. "What cloth? What are you talking about?" Ada pointed toward the hallway that led to the bedrooms. "The old clothes, they are calling my name." The room fell silent. Olama's husband looked up sharply. The other children stopped playing. Then the strangest thing happened. The candles on the table, all 5 of them, began to flicker. Their flames bent sideways, all pointing in the same direction, toward the children's bedroom, as if something in that room was breathing, pulling the fire toward itself. Olama's heart skipped. That night, Olama could not sleep. She tossed and turned, her mind replaying Ada's strange words. Finally, exhaustion pulled her under. But what waited in her dreams was worse than waking. She dreamed she was standing by the river. Her 3 children stood at the water's edge, waving at her and smiling. They wore the old clothes, the ones she had given away. Olama felt relief wash over her. They looked so happy. She ran toward them, calling their names. But as she got closer, she realized something was wrong. The clothes were sewn shut. The sleeves were stitched to the sides. The collars were sealed tight around their necks. Her children's mouths moved, but no sound came out. They were trapped inside the fabric, unable to breathe, unable to scream. Olama tried to tear the stitches with her fingers, but the threads were too strong. Her nails broke. Her hands bled. Her children's eyes grew wide with terror. Then the river began to rise. Olama woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. Her heart hammered in her chest. The room was dark and silent, but then she heard it. A soft sound, like thread being pulled through cloth. Rip, 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 coming from somewhere inside the house. Olama sat frozen, too afraid to move. Meanwhile, in her small room behind the kitchen, Eneka tried to wash the clothes. She filled a basin with water and soap, then carefully placed the first garment inside. Immediately, the water turned gray. A strange oily film spread across the surface. Eneka scrubbed harder, but the stains would not leave. If anything, they seemed to grow darker. She changed the water 3 times. Each time, the same thing happened. The cloth felt heavier with every wash, as if it had swallowed stones. Eneka's arms ached from the effort. She hung the clothes on the line outside, hoping the morning sun would cleanse them. But even in the moonlight, she could see that something was wrong. The fabric seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Eneka stepped back, fear creeping up her spine. She returned to her room and tried to sleep, but rest would not come. Around midnight, she heard it, a voice, soft and sweet, like a child whispering. It came from the clothes hanging outside. Eneka sat up, listening. The voice spoke again, clearer this time. "Wear me." Eneka's blood turned cold. She pulled her thin blanket over her head, praying silently. But the voice did not stop. "Wear me, Eneka. Wear me and you will have everything she has." The next morning, something terrible happened to Olama's children. Her eldest son, Chidi, woke up and could not remember the words to his favorite song. He sat at the breakfast table, humming a tune he had sung 1,000 times, but the lyrics were gone. Olama noticed but said nothing. Then her middle daughter, Amaka, forgot how to greet her grandmother. When the old woman visited that afternoon, Amaka stared at her blankly. "Who are you?" she asked. The grandmother's face fell. "It is me, my child, your mama's mother." But Amaka only blinked. By evening, the youngest, Ada, stared at Olama with empty eyes. "Are you my mother?" she asked. Olama's heart cracked. "Ada, stop playing. Of course I am your mother." But Ada did not smile. She tilted her head, studying Olama's face as if seeing a stranger. The children moved through the house like shadows. Their laughter was gone. Their brightness had dimmed. Olama tried to feed them, to sing to them, to hold them, but they remained distant, unreachable. That evening, as Olama stood in the kitchen crying, Chidi walked up behind her. He sniffed the air and said, his voice flat and strange, "You smell like envy, Mama. Why do you smell like envy?" Christmas gatherings in the village were grand affairs. Families displayed their blessings, shared meals, and exchanged stories. Olama attended the community feast wearing her finest wrapper and coral beads. She smiled widely, greeting everyone with exaggerated warmth. When the topic of Christmas kindness arose, Olama seized the moment. "I gave my maid all my children's old clothes," she announced loudly. "I wanted her to feel the Christmas spirit. After all, we must care for those less fortunate." The women clapped. The men nodded approvingly. "You have such a good heart, Olama," someone said. But behind her, Olama's 3 children stood silent and still. Their eyes were dull, their faces expressionless. No one seemed to notice except one person. An old stranger sat at the edge of the gathering. He wore raffia around his waist and beads around his neck. His eyes were sharp and knowing. He did not clap. He did not smile. As Olama continued boasting, the stranger leaned toward the person beside him and murmured, "The thread eater has woken." The person frowned. "What did you say?" But the stranger only shook his head and watched Olama with a gaze that seemed to pierce through skin and bone. When Olama finally turned and saw him staring, a chill ran through her. Their eyes met, and in that moment she knew. He knew what she had done. The next morning, Elder Babalola appeared at Olama's gate. He did not knock, he simply stood there waiting. When Olama saw him through the window, her stomach tightened. Everyone in the village knew Elder Babalola. He was the keeper of old knowledge, the one who read dreams and spoke to spirits. People sought him only when trouble was deep and doctors could not help. Olama opened the gate slowly. "Elder, you honor my home." Babalola did not smile. He walked past her and entered the compound without invitation. Olama followed, nervous. She offered him food, but he raised his hand. "I do not eat from a house that is not clean." Olama's face burned with shame. "Elder, I do not understand." Babalola sat on the stone bench beneath the mango tree. He looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. "Let me ask you one question, Olama. When you gave those clothes to your maid, did you give from love or did you give from disgust?" Olama opened her mouth, but no words came. Babalola nodded slowly. "Your silence is your answer." He bent down and drew a circle of ash around her feet. "Do not step outside this circle tonight. If you do, the river will claim a truth you are not ready to give." That same night, Neka sat alone in her room, staring at the bundle of clothes. The whispering had not stopped. It grew louder, more insistent. The voice was no longer sweet. It was commanding, "Wear me." Neka closed her eyes and prayed, but the voice pushed through her prayers like smoke through a cracked door. Then the vision came. Neka saw Madame Olama kneeling before her, begging for forgiveness. She saw herself living in Olama's house, wearing her jewelry, eating from her table. She saw her own children alive again, laughing and calling her name. The vision was so real that Neka could smell the jollof rice cooking. She could feel her daughter's hand in hers. "Wear me," the voice said again. "Wear me and become her. Take what she took from you. Take everything." Neka's hand reached toward the clothes. Her fingers trembled. The fabric seemed to glow in the darkness, warm and inviting. All she had to do was put it on, just one piece, just one sleeve. But then she remembered something her grandmother once told her. Bitterness is a poison you drink hoping someone else will die. Neka pulled her hand back, tears streaming down her face. "No," she whispered, "I will not." The room fell silent. Then a low growl echoed from the corner. Inside Olama's house, something impossible happened. The old clothes she had not given away, the ones still sitting in a basket in the storage room, began to move. At first it was small. A sleeve twitched, a collar shifted. Then, slowly, the clothes rose into the air. They unfolded themselves like bodies waking from sleep. Buttons blinked open and shut like eyes. Sleeves stretched and crawled across the floor.
A small dress walked on its hem, dragging itself toward the hallway. Olama's husband was the first to see it. He had gone to the storage room to fetch a tool and froze in the doorway. "Olama," he shouted, "come here now." Olama ran to him, and together they watched in horror as the pile of clothes marched, slithered, and crawled toward the children's bedroom. The door was closed, but the clothes pressed against it, scratching and pushing. Then, without anyone touching it, the door clicked, locked from the inside. The children were inside. Olama screamed and ran to the door, twisting the handle. It would not open. "Chidi, Amaka, Ada, open the door!" Silence. Olama pounded on the wood until her hands were red. Her husband tried to break it down, but the door would not budge. Inside the room, faint laughter echoed. Not the children's laughter, something else. By the next morning, the entire village knew something was wrong. The river, which had always run clear and cool, turned bitter. Fish floated belly up along the banks. Women who went to wash clothes came back crying. The water stained everything it touched, leaving dark marks that would not fade. Children who played near the river complained of nightmares. One boy woke screaming that something was sewing his shadow to the ground. Slowly, whispers began spreading through the market, the church, the school. "It is Olama's house. The evil started there." People avoided her compound. When she walked through the village, conversation stopped. Eyes followed her. One woman spat on the ground as she passed. Olama wanted to scream that it was not her fault, but deep down she knew the truth. Pride had poisoned her. Envy had twisted her gift, and now the entire village was paying for it. Elder Babalola stood by the river watching the dead fish float past. He shook his head slowly. "When one household heart is rotten," he said to no one in particular, "the whole community drinks the bitterness." That night, another child screamed. His mother found him tangled in his dead sheet, threads wrapped around his wrists like invisible hands, sewing him into place. The village was unraveling. Elder Babalola gathered the elders under the ancient Iroko tree. Olama was summoned. She came trembling, her coral beads dull, her wrapper wrinkled. The elder spoke in a voice that silenced even the wind. Long ago, there was a woman who envied her sister. She borrowed her sister's cloth and cursed it with bitterness. When the sister wore it, she fell ill and died. But the envy did not die with her. It became something else, something that feeds. The elder leaned closer. "It is called the thread eater," Babalola continued. "It is born when giving is poisoned by contempt. It grows when gifts are used as weapons. It awakens when the giver's heart is hollow." Olama's knees buckled. "How do I stop it?" Babalola's eyes were cold. "The giver must kneel before the receiver. She must apologize with a clean heart. She must humble herself completely, holding nothing back." Olama's face twisted. "Kneel? Before my maid?" The elders watched her carefully. Babalola nodded. "Yes, or the thread eater will take what you love most." Olama stood silent, her pride fighting against her fear. Finally, she shook her head. "I will give money, I will give land, I will throw a feast, but I will not kneel." Babalola sighed deeply. "Then you have chosen." That night, Olama looked in her mirror and saw herself wearing Neka's headscarf, smiling. Olama tried everything except humility. She bought 3 goats and sent them to the shrine. She paid the village priest to perform rituals. She hired women to cook a massive feast and invited the entire village. She distributed money to the poor, but none of it worked. Her children remained distant and strange. The river stayed bitter. The whispers grew louder. One evening, exhausted and desperate, Olama stood before her mirror to remove her jewelry. But when she looked at her reflection, she froze. The woman staring back was not her. It was her, but wearing Neka's faded headscarf. Her face was smiling, but it was not her smile. It was something else wearing her skin. Olama stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. "Who are you?" she whispered to the mirror. The reflection tilted its head and spoke, though Olama's lips did not move. "I am what you made me."
Olama screamed and covered the mirror with cloth. But even covered, she could feel eyes watching from behind the fabric. That night, she did not sleep. She sat in her bed clutching her Bible, praying the same prayers her mother had taught her. But the words felt empty. Because deep down, Olama knew the truth. She was too proud to bend, too proud to kneel, and pride always demands payment. In her small room, Neka knelt on the cold floor and prayed. She lit a candle and burned herbs her grandmother had left her, filling the room with smoke that smelled like earth and rain. She asked the spirits for protection, not revenge. She asked for strength, not power. The bundle of cursed clothes sat in the corner, silent but watchful. Neka could feel its presence like a living thing, breathing in the darkness. She did not touch it. She did not speak to it, but she knew it was waiting. Outside, the night was heavy. Even the crickets were silent. The moon hid behind thick clouds. Nekam whispered prayers until her voice grew hoarse. She asked God to protect Olama's children. She asked for mercy, even for the woman who despised her. Because Neka knew something Olama did not. Revenge was a trap. Bitterness was a prison. And the only way to defeat evil was to refuse to become it. As the candle flickered low, the bundle of clothes in the corner suddenly went still. The faint breathing sound stopped. The air in the room grew cold. Neka's skin prickled. She turned slowly and saw the clothes lying flat, as if something had just left them. Then, from outside her door, she heard it. Small footprints in the dust, child-sized, walking away towards Olama's house.
That night, the thread it had spoke clearly for the first time. Its voice was neither male nor female, but layered, like many voices woven together. It called to Ineka from the darkness outside her door. I can give you what you lost. Ineka pressed her back against the wall, heart racing. I can bring them back, your children, your husband. Give me Olama's children, and I will return yours. Tears poured down Ineka's face. The offer pierced her heart like a blade. She had buried her babies with her own hands. She had wept until no more tears would come. The emptiness inside her had never healed. All you have to do is say yes, the voice whispered. Let me take them. It is only fair. She has everything. You have nothing. Let me balance the scales. Ineka closed her eyes. For a moment, the temptation was unbearable. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to hold her children again, to hear their laughter, to feel their small hands in hers. But then, through the window, she saw something that made her breath catch. 2 small footprints appeared in the ash outside her door. Child-sized, blowing faintly in the moonlight, they were walking away, toward Olama's house. Ineka gasped. No, I will not trade innocent lives for my pain. Take nothing. Leave them alone. Inside Olama's house, her 3 children rose from their beds at the same moment. Their eyes were open, but they did not see. They moved like puppets, their steps slow and synchronized. They walked to their closets and pulled out the old clothes, the ones Olama had not given away. Without a word, they dressed themselves. Olama woke to the sound of her front door creaking open. She sat up, confused. Who is there? Silence. She climbed out of bed and walked to the hallway. Her children were gone. Panic exploded in her chest. Chidi! Amaka! Ada! She ran through the house, throwing open doors. They were nowhere. Then she heard it, singing, faint and eerie, coming from outside. She rushed to the window and saw them. Her 3 children walking in a line toward the river, wearing the cursed clothes. Their eyes were blank, their mouths moved, singing a song she did not recognize. Olama screamed and ran outside barefoot, her nightgown flapping in the wind. Stop! Come back! But they did not turn. They did not slow. They walked as if pulled by invisible strings. By the time Olama reached the riverbank, her children were standing at the water's edge. The river rose before them, a wall of dark water towering higher than any flood, and her children were about to step in. Then, from the shadows, Ineka appeared. She was breathless, her wrapper loose around her waist. She must have run all the way from her room. Without hesitation, she stepped between the children and the water. The river wind whipped her clothing. Her voice was firm. Spirits, if you must take someone, take me, but leave the innocent alone. The water trembled. The air grew thick. A voice, ancient and cold, rose from the river like mist. You would die for her children, the woman who despised you? Ineka's voice did not waver. I would die for any child. They did not choose this. Olama stood frozen, watching. Guilt crushed her chest like a stone. The river spoke again, its voice echoing across the village. Then there is only one way to break this curse. The one who gave in pride must kneel in humility. She must ask forgiveness with a clean heart. The water pointed, rippling toward Olama. Ineka turned and looked at her. Their eyes met. For the first time, Olama saw the depth of the woman she had despised, saw her courage, saw her goodness. Ineka spoke softly. Madam, you must kneel for your children. The river waited. The wind held its breath, and all of creation watched to see what pride would choose.
Olama's mind raced. She looked at her children, standing lifeless at the water's edge. She looked at Ineka, standing between them and death. She looked at the crowd of villagers gathering in the distance, watching, whispering. Everything in her screamed to refuse, to find another way, to offer money, land, anything but this humiliation. But the river did not want her wealth. It wanted her pride. Olama's lips trembled. I cannot, she whispered. Ineka's face fell. Please, madame, they are your children. Olama shook her head, tears streaming. You do not understand. If I kneel before you, I will have nothing left. My name, my respect, everything I built will be gone. Ineka's voice was gentle but firm. What is respect without your children? The question hung in the air. Olama looked at Ada, her youngest, standing at the water's edge, the little girl who used to climb into her lap and kiss her cheek, the little girl who called her Mama, the little girl who might die tonight. Olama's voice cracked. If I kneel, if I apologize, will they live? The river answered with a voice like thunder. That depends on whether your heart is true. Olama's knees trembled. Her pride and her love stood at war inside her. And then her eldest son, Chidi, took one step into the water. The moment Chidi's foot touched the river, something changed. His body went rigid. He turned slowly, his eyes glowing faintly red. When he spoke, the voice that came out was not his own. It was layered, ancient, and filled with cold amusement. You gave us away the day you gave away our cloth. The crowd gasped. Olama's hands flew to her mouth. Chidi's finger pointed directly at her chest. Mother, you say you love us, but when you handed our clothes to Ineka, you wished we were gone too. You wanted less trouble, less noise, less mess. Tears poured down Olama's face. No, that is not true. But Chidi's glowing eyes did not blink. You gave us away with disgust, and disgust opens doors. The thread eater does not live in cloth, it lives here. He tapped his chest where his heart was. It lives in you. The villagers murmured loudly. Phones appeared, recording everything. The truth was being exposed before the entire community. Amaka spoke next, her voice also layered and strange. Every time you gave a gift, it was poison wrapped in ribbon. Ada, the youngest, added in the same eerie tone. You wanted praise. You wanted people to call you generous, but your heart was empty. The river roared, and the thread eater's final words echoed across the water. She is mine, and I live inside her pride. Olama collapsed to her knees, not in surrender, but in exhaustion. Sobs tore through her chest. The truth her children spoke had shattered something inside her. She looked up at Ineka, her face streaked with tears and dust. I am right, she whispered.
All of you. I was afraid." The crowd fell silent. "I was afraid that if people saw my maid as valuable, they would see me as less. I was afraid that kindness would make me weak."
I gave those clothes not because I cared, but because I wanted to feel powerful. Her voice broke. I feared poverty. I feared losing my place. I feared that if I showed you love, Nneka, you would take what was mine. Olama looked at her children, their faces blank and possessed. I gave out of fear, dressed as kindness, and I poisoned my own house. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Nneka's eyes softened. The river's roar quieted slightly, as if listening. Olama whispered, barely audible, "If I kneel, truly kneel, will they live? Will this end?" Elder Babalola stepped forward from the crowd, his face unreadable. "Only if your heart changes, only if the kneel is real." Olama closed her eyes. She thought of her children's laughter. She thought of her pride, and she made her choice. Slowly, Olama removed her coral beads, the ones that marked her status, the ones her mother had given her. She placed them carefully on the ground. Then, she crawled forward on her knees through the mud until she was directly in front of Nneka. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Olama bowed her head low, so low her forehead touched Nneka's feet. Her voice was raw, stripped of pretense. "Nneka, forgive me. Forgive me for despising you. Forgive me for using you. Forgive me for giving you poisoned gifts and calling it kindness." Her shoulders shook. "I was wrong. I saw you as beneath me because I was afraid of my own emptiness. I give you my respect. I give you my apology. I give you my shame." Tears fell into the mud. "Please forgive me." Nneka stood frozen, tears streaming down her own face. The entire village held its breath. Then, gently, Nneka knelt down and lifted Olama's face. "I forgive you, madam. I forgive you." The moment those words left Nneka's lips, the wind stopped. The river began to lower. The red glow faded from the children's eyes. But then a scream ripped through the air. From the bundle of clothes still lying near the riverbank, a figure began to rise. Tall, woven from black thread, buttons for eyes, seams like scars, the thread eater had fully awakened. The creature was grotesque. Its body was made entirely of tangled fabric, stitched together with thick black thread that dripped like saliva. Buttons of different sizes covered its face, blinking slowly. Its limbs stretched and twisted unnaturally. When it opened its mouth, the sound that came out was a chorus of voices, all screaming at once. "No! She is mine! I have fed on her pride for years." The crowd scattered, screaming, but Nneka did not move. She stood between the thread eater and Olama's children, her arms spread wide. The creature lunged, not at Nneka, but at the children. It wanted to finish what it started, to take them into the river and drown them in envy's cold embrace. But Nneka was faster. She grabbed the cursed bundle of clothes, the ones Olama had given her, and wrapped them around her own body. The fabric burned against her skin, but she held on. "If you want someone, take me," she shouted. The thread eater paused, its button eyes focused on her. "You would die for them? For her?" Nneka's voice was steady. "Yes." She closed her eyes and began to pray. Not loudly, not desperately, but with the calm certainty of someone who had already decided. The prayer was simple. "God, let love be stronger than bitterness. Let mercy win." Light began to glow from Nneka's chest, soft at first, then brighter, like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. The thread eater shrieked, recoiling from the light. It clawed at the air, trying to reach Nneka,
but the glow pushed it back. "If I die," it howled, "I take something with me." The creature lunged one final time, not at Nneka, but at Olama. Its thread-like fingers wrapped around her throat.
But before it could squeeze, Nneka threw herself forward, still wrapped in the cursed clothes, and embraced the creature. The light surrounding her exploded outward. The thread-eater screamed, its voice splitting into 1,000 fragments. The fabric that made up its body began to unravel. Threads snapped and fell away like ash. Buttons clattered to the ground. Seams tore open, spilling darkness that evaporated in the light. Within seconds, the creature was gone. Only dust remained. Nneka collapsed to her knees, gasping. The cursed clothes fell from her shoulders, now just ordinary fabric. But something had been taken. The thread-eater's final strike had landed, not on her life, but on something else. Olama stood trembling and slowly realized what she had lost, her voice. When she tried to speak, no sound came. The thread-eater had stolen her ability to boast, to command, to speak her pride. Her wealth remained, her house remained, but her voice, the tool she had used to elevate herself above others, was gone. Poetic justice. The village slowly returned to normal. The river ran clear again. Fish returned. Children played without fear. But everything had changed. Olama could no longer speak, but she learned to listen. She spent her days serving quietly. She helped at the market. She swept the church. She cared for the elderly. People watched her transformation with cautious hope. Slowly, trust began to rebuild, not because of her words, but because of her actions. Nneka, meanwhile, became someone the village honored, not as a maid, but as a protector. Her small room behind the kitchen was no longer her prison. Families brought their troubles to her. Broken people came to be healed. She never asked for payment. She never boasted. And the clothes, the ones that had been cursed, were washed and given to orphans, because what had been poisoned by pride was now redeemed by love. Years later, Olama's voice returned, but when it did, it was softer, kinder. She used it only to bless, never to boast. She and Nneka became friends, walking together to the river each morning to pray. The thread-eater never returned because there was no pride left to feed it. Listen carefully. Never give from disgust what you would not give from love. A gift can carry blessings, or it can carry the giver's true heart. What lesson will you take from this story?